Hi, my name is Jane Zhang, and this is my final reflective video for Multicultural Lit. I decided to answer the second prompt, which was, in some works of literature, childhood and adolescence are portrayed as times graced by innocence and a sense of wonder. In other works, they are depicted as times of tribulation and terror. Focusing on a single novel or play, explain how its representation of childhood or adolescence shapes the meaning of the work as a whole. I'm going to analyze The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. The story is organized in chronological order. When it started out, Amir and Hassan are just two innocent kids who are unaware of the lurking danger of their surroundings. Since they grew up together, they are childhood best friends. They spend almost every second together, whether it's climbing trees, shooting walnuts at the neighbor's dog, or reading books. Hassan was loyal to Amir. He stood up for him and defended him against the bullies. Though Amir at the time often wondered why he and Hassan were treated differently by society and why people often made fun of Hassan for being flat-nosed, he only had a vague idea of the social structure and still treated Hassan as his friend. Amir was initially sheltered from seeing the cruelty of the world. However, his innocent mentality soon disappeared when he found out about the ongoing feud between his and Hassan's ethnic groups, the Pashtuns and Hazaras. Amir was a Pashtun, Hassan was a Hazara. They were destined to be enemies, not friends. The deeply rooted conflicts between the two groups started to widen the gap between Amir and Hassan as well. Their friendship was too fragile to last. The drastic difference between them cannot be overlooked, no matter how hard they try to. Though Amir and Hassan are seemingly inseparable, they're segregated in many ways. For instance, they have to immediately part ways after they're done with playing. Amir lives in a lavishly decorated house, while Hassan lives in a minimalistic shack, and Amir has only stepped foot into Hassan's living quarters a handful of times, reinforcing the idea of the rigid social boundary set between the two social classes. Amir had a tumultuous childhood, mostly characterized by the feeling of inadequacy and uncertainty. He often felt guilty towards his mother, who died giving birth to him. Because he knew his father loved his mother greatly, he felt like he was responsible for her death, and therefore he tried to atone for his sins by impressing his father. At times, he became frustrated at his father for not spending enough time with him and for not accepting him for who he is and trying to mold him into somebody else according to his standards. He took soccer classes against his will just to please his father, yet it wasn't enough to win his love. Amir also went through a period of an identity crisis and self-doubt. He wasn't sure if he should further pursue writing as a hobby because of his father's disencouragement. But fortunately, with Rahim Khan's guidance, he decided to get back on track. Amir's strong desire to be liked by his father translated to his jealousy of Hassan, whom his father always brought along to every outing with Amir. This inevitably led him to frame Hassan for stealing the watch. He couldn't handle the guilt for not telling anyone about Hassan being raped. He was a coward for being scared to speak up, so he kept quiet about the secret, but he was tormented by his conscience every day. Amir's adolescence brought him even more conflicts and struggles. He fled the country with his father in a state of terror after witnessing the widespread violence and paranoia caused by the communist takeover. Life in America wasn't any easier. He had to take care of his stubborn father, who had a difficult time adjusting to the American culture. His father's death and his final realization of the truth about Hassan being his half-brother worsened his guilt. He lived in a state of misery and regret. The reason why Khaled Hosseini depicted Amir as an emotionally unstable child who had a terrible childhood is to ridicule the racial prejudice between Hazaras and Pashtuns in Afghanistan, and also to criticize warfare for turning the country into a wreck. In creating Amir as a character, he not only narrates his own experience as an expatriate who left his home country due to political instability, but also sends out a message, warning people about the destructive impact racial bigotry has on people and encouraging positive changes in the future. This class exposed me to many current issues in our world, such as social injustices, the immigration experience, and how we could apply literary theories into text and films. My biggest takeaway from the course is probably to take pride in my own heritage and to accept others for theirs. It is only through mutual acceptance and kindness that we can progress as a society. The most important argument I recall was the discussion question in Module 2, Can we avoid segregation? To address this question, we must first acknowledge that yes, there is segregation in our world, and though we're not conscientiously being racist, we're more likely to cluster and socialize within our own racial groups. It seems natural and instinctive for us to interact with people who are similar to us. Yet what we don't realize is that we're unconsciously creating segregation in doing so. After playing the simulation game where it asks you to click on the image that most correlates with a description, I find myself unconsciously relating negative adjectives with African Americans and positive adjectives with Caucasians. The results even shocked myself, because I consider myself an open-minded person who accepts all cultures. However, the results are not limited to me only. This is actually quite a common phenomenon. The source of racial profiling is the multitude of media that we're exposed to on a daily basis, which consists of a lot of stereotypes. Though we know they are not an accurate reflection of a race, those ideas are so deeply ingrained in our minds that we often refer to them unconsciously. One literary theory that supports this argument is the ethnic studies, which was founded on the basis that people's entire system of knowledge was framed from the perspective of white people. It challenges the Eurocentric perspective of things and encourages minority groups to bring in their perspectives, whether it's literature, history, or culture. In doing so, we'll be able to better eliminate racial stereotypes, which are inaccurate and sometimes even harmful to the images of a certain race. Restoring a voice to the oppressed minorities who have been silenced will shed light on their struggles in becoming a part of society. It would also prevent us from the danger of a single story. White history isn't the only history. We must take into account both sides of the coin. For those with whom I disagree, they might say things like stereotyping is not harmful because we're all aware that it's made for comedic effect and not a direct reflection of reality. Or they might also bring up the point that racism is valid because the minorities put themselves in a position of subordination and therefore are responsible for their own suffering. They may also express white supremacist tendencies, which stem from fear that minorities might prosper and outdo them. They're also likely to deny that white privilege exists even though they're inherently born with a better chance of survival just because they're white. One way I could apply what I learned in this course beyond the four walls of the classroom is to not let racial stereotypes cloud my judgment when interacting with others. I must remain fair and objective and not make assumptions about others before truly getting to know them. I could also apply elements of the literary theory into real-life situations. For example, when I face the dilemma of whether to study or to watch Netflix, I could mediate between my id, which operates on pleasure principle and convinces me to go have fun and watch movies, and my superego, which consists of my internalized ideals telling me to be a good student and study. I could also participate in protests and parades against social injustices to bring equality to all.